You don't want to know what I've just seen. It's Mountain Devil.
Mountain Devil! You've been having too much of this moonshine. You want a little smoke? They look like Fred. They have horns. Was it a boy or a girl, Fred?
I blasted it.
The animal fell into a ravine. Its body was never recovered. The miners slept off the events of their day.
It's a far-fetched story. Men attacked and even injured by irate giant apes in the USA, yet it was taken seriously, reported on the front page of the state newspaper alongside the world news. Could there really be a giant ape living in North America? Well, since Beck's encounter, Bigfoot has grown to be big news, but there's still no body, no skin and bones. And this is Bigfoot country. These remote forests run all the way from Alaska to California, 55,000 square kilometers of incredibly productive habitat. You know, I've never seen anywhere quite so unspoilt and fertile. Not much goes hungry here, and it was once the happy hunting ground of the Kwagil Indians. Their name for Bigfoot was Bookwus.
The Bookwus is not really mythical. It's an actual being that's taller than a man, covered in hair.
What do they live on? How do they coexist with deer, bears, all of the other known animals of this region?
They live on a lot of plant life, fruit and vegetables, seafood, clams and so forth. But they are known to harvest deer and to harvest salmon as well in the rivers.
How often are they seen? I mean, are they seen every year?
I live out here 6 months of the year, every year, for the last 5 or 6 years, and you're lucky to hear of a story once every 3 or 4 years. So they're very rare, but like our legends say, they live in an invisible house deep in the forest. That's why we can't find them. And they're also nocturnal. They're out at night harvesting their foods.
And that is interesting. No nocturnal apes are yet known to science. They haven't got good enough night vision. But for Tom Seaward here, the legend is backed up by an encounter.
In 1993, I went into an anchorage behind my ancestral village with my 3 crew, and just after dark, we heard whistling coming from the shore. And we hit the switch on a spotlight, and there it was, a male and a female, and she automatically dropped into a fetal position, and the male at the same time dropped down to his knees and brought his arm up in front of his face, and you could see the reflection of his eyes, the green reflection from the spotlight. And they just stayed there for 15 or 20 minutes. I had the spotlight on them, and they froze. They did not move. But what I saw on that beach that night was, there was no way it would have been a black or a grizzly bear. I've seen blacks and grizzlies stand. No way could anyone ever say this is a bear to me, because I knew what I saw. It was definitely a Bookwus walking across the beach.
Tom's animal is a potent symbol, a rich subject for a professional storyteller like him. And this culture stretches back hundreds of years, which is also strange, because here in North America there's no fossil evidence for any ape species except man. Book-wuss, Bigfoot, doesn't have a history. So does it have a family, a mate, siblings, offspring? All species have to exist in populations. What would such a population of apes need? Well, taking mountain gorillas as an example, they need food and enough space to harvest it. These groups need ranges of up to 30 square kilometres. There are around 600 mountain gorillas. They're critically endangered and live in small pockets high in the jungles. They were discovered way back in 1902, and these days we know every individual. So it seems that even the shyest, the most remote populations of apes have trouble hiding from science. How often do people come across Bigfoot? A fellow called John Green has logged over 3,000 encounters in the last 30 years. And one, clearly the most remarkable, comes with a piece of film. You may have already seen it. It was shot by the late Roger Patterson and his mate Bob Gimlin in California in October of 1967. And sitting here watching it with John is pretty remarkable. He knew these guys.
This is the start of the roll that they eventually got the picture of the creature on, yes. They're just riding their horses up the bed of Bluff Creek.
Is that Patterson himself?
Yes, that is, although usually you'll be seeing Bob Gilman because Patterson did most of the shooting.
He'd been making this film for some time. Was he much of a cameraman?
Strictly amateur. There's Bob now with pack horse.
By any standards, it's a bit of a home movie, but then, with just a minute left on the film, it changes dramatically. So this was taken immediately after they saw it?
As soon as Roger got off the horse and got the camera out, yes.
Whatever your first impression of this footage, there's no in-camera trickery. We've examined the original, and something really walked in front of Patterson's camera. And let's be clear about one thing. This footage either has to be a hoax, or the most important piece of wildlife film ever. That's the footage. Here's the story that goes with it. It was around 1 p.m. on October the 20th, 1967. Patterson and Gimlin were riding north up the Bluff Creek in California. They rounded a bend and saw the creature. Patterson pulled the camera from his saddlebag and began filming. After about 11 seconds, he began to run closer, and as he did, Bob rode closer still, to within 20 meters of the creature. He covered Roger with his rifle until the subject walked away.
We got it!
Using the latest computer technology, we've stabilized the film so it's easier to see. Now, you might think it looks like a man in a suit, but so would the legendary Bigfoot. The question is, which is it? From what we can see, the fur is pretty convincing. It flows correctly down the back, and you can apparently see muscles moving under the skin. But would any shy, wild animal react to the arrival of two strange, excited men on horseback by just strolling away with a single glance back? For me, its behaviour is definitely odd. Footage is one thing. The creature left traces, and to substantiate the film, there were footprints in the sand. Incredibly, they were deeper than the ones left by Bob's horse. Each hoof would put down a weight of 400 kilos. But the depth of these prints suggests the creature was even heavier. Yet the average weight for a 6-foot male gorilla is only 180 kilos. Roger reloaded his Kodak and filmed them. Then they took plaster casts. Some measured 37 centimeters long. And this is one of them. So are these here the remainder of the cast that he made? Because they're very different, and they're obviously made by the same animal in the same place at the same time.
That's right. This probably represents the actual shape of the foot fairly closely, but sometimes the action of the foot makes a very different shape. This is another one that has a very strange shape. In fact, it was just the way that heel drove in and then shifted the weight up to the front.
The impressions are good, very natural, but their depth suggests the creature was far heavier than a gorilla the same size. So could these critically corroborative footprints be fakes? The Patterson film is at the nub of the whole Bigfoot phenomena. It's kept it alive for the last 30 years. And its strength lies in the fact that it's real film and it's combined with actual artifacts, the footprints. The problem is that you never see the creature on the creature film make a footprint. And the film with the footprints disappeared immediately after it was first shown. And that is a problem. The biggest Bigfoot event of all was recorded near Bossberg on the Canadian border. A total of 1,089 footprints were found trodden into mud and snow. They cross a 1.1 metre high fence without a break in stride. The tracks appear to be of a very long-legged creature, but curiously also a crippled one. Its right foot had twisted toes and displaced bones, something that would be unusual, but at the same time very natural. At Washington State University, primate anatomist and Bigfoot author Dr. Grover Krantz has studied the bone positions in meticulous detail.
A human foot expanded to this length would have the bulges about here. This means the heel was relatively longer and the forefoot relatively shorter, which is just exactly the leverage required for a walking biped of about 8 feet or 2.5 meters tall.
That's some quite complex aspects of anatomy there. Do you think that any hoaxer anywhere would be up to reproducing those?
If any hoaxer was to do this sort of trick, he would have had to figure out everything from zero, whereas I saw the tracks and figured it out. He would have had to know human anatomy, foot anatomy very thoroughly. He would have to know the effects of absolute size on how the strength increases but the weight increases faster, how the leverage has to change, how a diseased foot would have to bulge out to the side of the corresponding parts. In other words, he has to be a better anatomist and a more clever, inventive person than I am. And I don't think anybody like that has existed since Leonardo da Vinci.
In fact, a proven Bigfoot hoaxer lives very close to Bossberg. I can't explain all of these accounts, but they don't fuse into any framework of biological possibility that Bigfoot could exist as a real animal. So what about the crucial Patterson footage? What biology does it contain? John Green was the first to investigate it. He reconstructed the event just 9 months later. This is Jim McLaren, 6'5" tall, walking the same route as the Bigfoot. He'd been to Bluff Creek when the tracks were still plainly to be seen, so he knew the route it took. With a digital effects device, we can precisely match the two separate pieces of film and show that the creature was only a bit taller than McLaren and a little bulkier. But the footprints suggest that it was at least 4 times as heavy. The movement has always been controversial as well. Grover Krantz thinks the gait of the creature is definitely inhuman.
The Patterson creature walks leaning forward somewhat and bends its knees most of the time, so that when it takes a step, it supports the leg with a bent knee and keeps 2 feet on the ground for an unusual length of time. It also lifts the foot very high behind each step, like so. In addition to all those things, it also swings the arms, which is very difficult to imitate, like this. And this is something I can do only for a short period of time, but the Patterson subject did it for at least 300 feet, and I don't think anyone could be trained to do that.
Personally, I'm not so sure. Grover himself just did his version of the walk for 30 feet. With 10 times the practice, maybe someone could walk 10 times further. Whatever, everything Bigfoot leads to Patterson and to Bluff Creek, so I decided to pay homage to the site. 31 years later, it's all steep valleys, rocky creek beds, and certainly nothing that looks like the area where the film was shot. But in 1964, there'd been a massive flood, and it had ripped out all of the scrub and deposited lots of sandbars here, and for once, it had created a window of opportunity for someone to see a mysterious creature, or to pull off a fabulous hoax. If this was a hoax, it was a good one, which means it would have to have been well executed. So, what are the options? Well, in option 1, both Roger and Bob are innocent. They were hoaxed by a separate party in a suit. Frankly, it's unlikely. How could the hoaxer be sure of meeting them out there in the wilderness and also guarantee not to get shot? Both men were armed, and remember, only a body will ever satisfy science. Option 2. Roger and Bob could have set the whole thing up themselves, built the suit, the lot. Well, Roger was a pretty resourceful guy. He could turn his hand to quite a few things, and so could Bob. But that suit is too good. It's not an amateur effort, more likely the product of a professional special effects designer. Option 3 has a third man involved, someone who employed Roger to film the creature, use a part-exposed roll of film, and bring Bob along as an essential second witness. It would easily have been worth their while. After the film was shown, a TV company in Los Angeles offered Patterson $50,000. A modern equivalent would stand closer to $250,000. So this option has Roger leading on an innocent Bob, and Roger was firmly in control. They'd even conspicuously agreed not to shoot at the creature unless it turned and attacked. Bob Gimlin doesn't talk Bigfoot anymore these days, but in 1992 he spoke on tape to John Green.
This particular day that we got the film footage, starting out early in the morning. I left early in the morning, and of course Roger slept in, and my horse loosened a shoe up, so I come back in to tack the shoe on tighter, and Roger was gone when I got back, and after a while...
So, Roger and Bob were apart on the morning before the film was made.
I had covered that morning, and I told him, he said, well, why don't we ride up in this area that we had ridden.
And then Roger led Bob right to the spot. It's a suspicious detail, but Bob still maintained that what he saw was an animal. He hasn't spoken to the media for 13 years, but he is the crucial eyewitness.
Hello?
Hi, Bob. This is Chris Packham, and I work for the BBC Natural History Unit in Bristol, England. At the moment, we're making... Surprisingly, Bob was quite approachable, happy to tell his story.
When I first saw this thing, it was just like the adrenaline flew, you know. I mean, I was shocked, excited, just like golly, then they do exist, you know.
It was a fascinating call, but there was one big question. Do you still think that what you saw was an animal?
Well, I've thought about this many, many times over the years. At one time in my life, right shortly after the film footage, I was totally convinced that no one could fool me. And, of course, I'm an older man now, and I see a lot of things, and I think there could have been a possibility. But it would have had to have been really well planned by Roger, and I feel that they would have had to have been very, very careful, because I had a .30-06 loaded with 180 grain bullets. And had that thing have turned and rushed me, I would have shot it. So I feel that if that was a hoax, somebody was taking an awful big chance with their life.
So maybe that's the answer to why the creature just walked away. Maybe it was a brilliant idea casting Bob as a perfectly innocent eyewitness. There's one thing left to do. Look for the third man. First stop, that suit. In Burbank, California, Optic Nerve Studios specialize in building fantastical animals around actors, with astonishing results. It's run by John Vulich.
In my mind, it's undoubtedly a suit.
It has all the earmarks of being a guy in a suit.
Could a suit of this quality have been made then, and if so, by whom?
There's been rumors in the industry for years that John Chambers, who had built the suits for Planet of the Apes, and in fact was doing Planet of the Apes at the time that this footage was shot, had built the suit. None of it's been substantiated, but it's been rumors that have been persistent for years.
So if the suit was off the peg and the movement's not so strange after all, let's get the camera Patterson used, find an amateur operator and recreate exactly to the inch the action at Bluff Creek. This is our creature's starting point. All we've got to do is measure out 112 feet down here to where it's found on the first frame. Action! The first important revelation of this precise reenactment is quite how close Roger and Bob were to the creature. They were right on top of it. Its behaviour wasn't unnatural, just walking away unconcerned. It was implausible. So, did you get it?
Yeah, I reckon I did.
Secondly, this is what we shot. At this distance, with this lens, you're certain to get the creature in the frame, unless you artificially shake the camera. Even so, it's difficult to see much detail in the suit, which is ideal. The whole thing, the location, the suit, the camera work, all gel into a beautifully crafted whole. There are loads of trendy, wobbly camera commercials in fashion now, but they always have an image that sells the product, like frame 352, the look back. I'm Bigfoot, buy me. And millions of people have. There's a hell of a lot of space in America, but it's trampled all over. And in biological terms, there is absolutely no chance at all that there's an unknown species of giant ape stalking around California, or for that matter, Canada. You see, the Bigfoot phenomenon isn't based on good science. It rests upon one thing, the Patterson film, and that is a hoax. We've shown you just how easily it could have been done, and now Bob Gimlin has broken his silence and confessed that he's not entirely sure about what he saw in the first place. And to me, that is incredibly significant, because it's his word that has helped keep this hoax alive for more than 30 years. But now it's over. Bigfoot isn't dead, because it was never alive, only in the minds of the dreamers and the schemers. But then, good on them. You know, if Roger Patterson were here today, I'd shake him by the hand. I'm not saying I'd load his camera, but I'd shake him by the hand.
In 1970, Don Willans led the reconnaissance for a British climb on Mount Annapurna.
I was with Mike Thompson and two Sherpas. These are men who really understand the mountains, but take life very seriously.
Yeti, good one.
Very bad for you.
Why?
No good. No good. Yeti.
We were moving through deep snow, and it was fairly exhausting. The evening we set up base, we just put our packs down to make camp, when there was a commotion at the back of me. I turned round just in time to see something drop out of sight behind the ridge. But night was coming, so I put it to the back of my mind. I had to get up. I had this strange feeling that if this creature was still around, it would show itself. It was daylight practically. The moon was so bright, and I saw a dark patch in the shadows. I definitely saw it move, and I got the impression it was an ape-like creature. I watched it for almost 10 minutes. Then, as if it knew it was being watched, it dropped out of sight.
In the book, that is the Book of Known Animals, there are just 4 great apes: gorillas, chimpanzees, orangutans, and man. And the remarkable thing is that we humans are so similar to the others. In fact, we share 98% of our genes with chimpanzees. So maybe it's not too surprising that there are so many other legends of hominid primates in cultures all around the world. Stories of big hairy monsters, wild men, that sort of thing. But then why are these legends so common, and why do we like to believe in them? And at the end of the 20th century, could there really be a close living relative of ours out there in the wild, as yet unknown to science? I've come here to Nepal because probably the most famous of all those legends, that of the abominable snowman or the Yeti, is deeply ingrained in the culture here. And its popularity has spread ever since Western mountaineers first brought back tales of their encounters with these animals high in the Himalayas. It feels strange setting off in search of a myth, but then I haven't come here to see a Yeti. My quest is to investigate the possibility of its existence in purely biological terms, and that means a trek high into Sherpa country.
Johnny Ho.
Johnny Ho.
Yeah, it means let us go.
Let us go.
Yeah.
So we've got to start sometime.
So,
okay.
Johnny Ho.
The culture here is so different. There's a real sense of spiritual harmony with nature and the landscape. The head porter told me that the Yeti represents a very potent force in the mountains, a destructive force. No, I'm no athlete. I don't work out in the gym 3 times a week. But I'm only 36. I've never smoked and I'm not overweight. But at this altitude, I'm really struggling. I'm up in the clouds, and the Sherpas are probably already in the tea house. Yeah, very funny. Johnny Ho, Johnny Ho. By the time I'd reached Namche Bazaar at 13,000 feet, that's over 4,000 meters, I needed to stop and acclimatise. Lapka Norbu is one of the village elders, renowned for his wisdom. It was a perfect opportunity to find out how seriously the locals take the Yeti as an animal. So you think they're definitely a real animal?
I think so, but it's a rare animal, but that's why it's very hard. People believe there are 2 kinds of Yeti. One Yeti which is more rare, which mostly look for man. But the other Yeti mostly eats animal.
Only eats animals?
Animals, yeah.
So do most of the people here then actually fear Yetis? They're afraid of them, are they?
Mm-hmm.
Traditional Sherpa paintings are pictograms, 2-dimensional maps of the fields, houses, even the number of yaks each family owns. As there are no roads up here, they show the routes between each place. And typically, peering down from the peaks, there are Yetis. So how often do local people encounter these animals? Well, there is one extraordinary story. In 1974, Lapka Doma said she was brutally attacked by one.
When I was 14 years old, we grazed our yaks at Machermo, and that's where it happened. I turned, and there was a black figure just behind me. It threw me into the river. When I came out of the river, I realized my hair had been pulled out.
She was found by her brother.
The yaks had been killed. When wolves or snow leopards attack cattle, they make a lot of wounds. But these had only teeth marks, yet all the flesh had been eaten from inside. I found a Yeti footprint in the sand. It was narrow at the heel, and the toes were long and spread out.
It's a powerful story, but it's far too late to provide tangible biological evidence. But for the Yeti to exist now, it must have a history. Before I'd left Kathmandu, I met George Schaller, a brilliant field naturalist who knows the Himalayas well, and he had a view on the history of the Yeti.
There's no question that during the Pleistocene, based on fossils found in China and Vietnam and so forth, a gigantic ape lived in the region. Nobody's sure exactly what it lived on, but most likely lived on a combination of meat and vegetable matter.
This is Gigantopithecus. It might have lived alongside humans. So, in a storytelling culture that stretches so far back, maybe the Yeti legends are based on fact. But what about now? Could a whole population of these apes remain hidden? Well, George has spent years here, tracking one of the most elusive animals on Earth, the snow leopard.
The snow leopard lives in the high mountains where it can see a person approaching miles away. And it can crouch down and you can walk within a few feet of it and never see it. Or it moves off quietly like a cloud shadow, like a wisp of smoke.
Even local naturalists only glimpse these animals once every couple of years. So could it be that the Yeti is just as shy?
I think the chances are extremely small that another great ape is likely to be found. On the other hand, it's very difficult to prove something doesn't exist. I think there's still a faint chance that something might exist, something unexplained obviously is still there.
If anything is here, it's got to be in the forest, because that's the only place it could remain hidden, and more importantly, the only place it could find any food. In summer, this forest is quite a pleasant environment, given the limited diversity of plants. But a primate needs a constant food supply, so the key test is the winter. Now, everything edible has shriveled and died, and the few species of animal that do live here have either moved lower down or hibernated. In effect, this larder is empty. If a hidden population of hominid-type animals has evolved to live here, and it's living in some of the harshest conditions that any primate possibly could. But okay, if the Yeti has overcome these obstacles of physiology, metabolism, and ecology, what's the evidence for its existence? Strangely, the documented evidence comes from up here, above the tree line, in the form of footprints. A number of explorers this century, including Don Willens, have discovered tracks. They often appear two-footed, but to save energy, when they walk through snow, four-footed animals, like bears, will plant their hind feet in the prints of their forefeet. And that leaves a track like an upright ape's, a track like mine. But there's another very serious problem. The incredible shortage of oxygen up here often makes it difficult for unaccustomed Westerners to make reasoned conclusions about anything they see. Probably the most famous set of footprints of all were those taken by Shipton, published in 1951. Just look at these footprints. They're pretty convincing. What's really neat about them is that they led in a trail which went for over a mile. Now the thing is, Shipton never admitted it, but it was widely thought to be a hoax. It's the monastery here at Kumjung, which houses the only remaining Yeti artifact in the whole region. And it's one of the Sherpa religion's most revered relics, and it's meant to be a Yeti scalp. Thank you. So, did this really come from a real animal, from a real Yeti?
Yes, it is Yeti. Totally different from a human skull.
To me, it looks like a very poor fake. It's got an obvious seam, and more importantly, the hair is growing up towards the crown, and that just isn't natural. And in the 60s, the most famous of all Himalayan mountaineers, Sir Edmund Hillary, took this scalp back to the west for testing. The verdict, Serau, a Himalayan goat antelope. But they just checked the hairs under a microscope. Now we have infallible DNA testing. So I needed to meet with Tenzing, head of the village committee. I'd like to take just one hair from this Yeti scalp to test using the latest scientific techniques, which would determine once and for all, with no doubt, whether this comes from a known species of animal or a species which is yet unknown to science. So can I have just one hair, just one?
Sorry. Because I don't care whether the Western people are saying buffalo skin or whatever skin. But this is, we do believe this Yeti scalp, and so let them say whatever it is.
I respect your passion. I'll leave you with all of your hairs.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks.
In the forest of Sumatra, 8,000 kilometres to the south, there's another less well-known ape-man legend. So could this be the sign that we're not alone? It's a print attributed to Orang Pendek, the short man, and it certainly excited leading primate scientist David Chivers.
The footprints are amazing, and the mixture of ape and human features blended together. It's retained some of the grasping abilities of the apes, but also got a sort of flat-footed version of the human foot. And this enables it to walk upright.
There's a team funded by Fauna and Flora International, and they're out here looking for this animal. They're searching in an extraordinary place called Karinshi Sablat. Now, we don't know much about this forest, but the one thing we do know is that it's not a barren snow desert like the Himalayas.
The forests of Southeast Asia, particularly Sumatra, are so complex and diverse, and still extensive, that it's quite feasible that there's a species of ape that's eluded discovery.
But it has been seen. Team member Debbie Marta first glimpsed the animal in 1993.
It walked straight across the valley in front of me, 30 metres away. So close and so clear. Didn't expect to see it. Certainly didn't expect to see it that clearly. And just walking between these two trees, vegetation to about hip level. This gorgeous, graceful, very strongly built primate, big ape, walking out of a legend and into broad daylight, lit up by the sun. And the disbelief of seeing this thing. And if I'd seen it concealed in undergrowth, I could have said, well, I saw something. But I didn't see something. I saw an orang pendek walk across the valley, just 30 metres away from me.
Debbie's main task is to follow up sightings and encounters, which means effective liaison with locals. The modern world has all but destroyed the orang kudu. In this tribe, only 30 remain. They're incredibly secretive, difficult to meet. But Debbie has their confidence. Without question, they're our best way of finding out what lives in this forest.
Saya mau Bapak arau ketemu sama kawan saya. Ini Pak Chris di mana?
Hello. Hello. Dan hier dari Inggris datang dari jauh ke sini.
One of the tribe, Pak Bu Yang, had a recent encounter with the orang pendek.
Iya, panjang. Panjang. Panjang di mana panjang di badan sini?
It was the same color all over.
Ada yang lebih panjang atau yang lebih pendek?
Enggak, sama.
Its face was covered in hair, like a bear.
Muka bentuknya apa? Atau tidak lihat?
Mukanya tuh seperti.
But it wasn't a bear. We all know bears.
Could he have got it wrong?
No, it was a man of the forest.
OK, they know it's here, but they couldn't show me one. But then there are a few British mammals, otters in England, pine martens in Scotland, that I wouldn't be able to show them. The fact is that gathering good scientific evidence here is incredibly tough. Basically, it's the environment, the heat, the wet and the mud. In the last 4 years, the team have found footprints in lots of different locations, often in long, continuous tracks, and they all have the features of upright walking that so excited David Chivers. The team are convinced that they're pretty conclusive evidence.
You can actually see the movement of the foot. You've got the toes, 1, 2, 3, 4 toes. This is a large primate, and its foot doesn't approximate in any way to any other primate that's known in these forests.
The one thing, short of a dead body, that would prove there's a new species here is DNA. But its collection requires absolute sterility. In these conditions, that's quite unimaginable.
What we're looking for is DNA from the gut wall of the animal, which we can then get analysed.
So far, none of the lab results have proved positive. And as for finding a body, there's virtually no chance. When something dies, it can disappear overnight. In this heat and moisture, it becomes an insect and fungus banquet, and then porcupines eat the bones. Nevertheless, to David Chivers, the search is still worthwhile.
What really excited me was reading Deborah's reports, and it sent shivers down your spine. It was so uncanny, and given the frequency of these sightings, there's got to be something out there that is incredible. Will make a real tremendous discovery, a new ape for a new millennium.
Short of the body or bones that science craves, a good clear photograph would be the next best thing. But just like everything here, it's not easy. A Sumatran forest is probably one of the trickiest places to photograph wildlife in the world. Even state-of-the-art, lightweight autofocus equipment isn't going to get you a picture unless you're extremely lucky. And it's a result, not luck, that's needed here. But whilst to date Debbie has drawn a blank, the team photographer, Jeremy Holden, has made remarkable progress.
This is how we're doing it. This is how we're getting the pictures. Basically, we're just using a off-the-shelf infrared unit here, fitted onto an ordinary 35mm compact camera, which has been specially adapted to fire when the infrared beam here is broken by anything passing along the trail.
It's a simple technique, producing startling results.
This one, for instance, is a picture of a Sumatran tiger, very seldom seen and very rarely photographed.
Fantastic, fantastic.
This was Project First. It's a melanistic golden cat.
And again, an animal which you don't see very often, I presume.
Well, I did actually manage to see this one, but only once. But this animal, the Sumatran tapir, the size of a buffalo, black and white, extremely conspicuous and not very intelligent, but yet I've never have seen one.
And yet here it is in full colour.
This is something that's even rarer. It's a cloudy leopard.
Look at that. But the most extraordinary was a bird.
This one here, very, very poor quality picture, but it just shows what can be done. This is a giant pitta, which is something that hadn't been recorded in the national park ever, and in fact hadn't been recorded in Sumatra for over 100 years.
Wow, wow. Look at that. This is a picture of an animal that one could reasonably call extinct. So could this technique record another, which supposedly doesn't exist?
If we're going to get a picture of Oran Pendek, if we're going to prove it exists, this is the way we're going to do it.
And you know, I believe him. I think if there's anyone on the planet who's going to discover an animal that's on the brink of our knowledge, Jeremy could be the one to do it. Now, I have to admit, I found little more evidence for orang pendek than for the Yeti, but there's a dramatic difference in their viability. Nepal is cold and barren, whereas this Sumatran rainforest is an incredibly fertile resource. If, as a rational scientist, I could afford to pin hope anywhere, this is where I'd stick my pin. Surely here is our best chance of an X-creature. Thousands of square miles of the world's richest and most productive forest, an unexplored wilderness, and a place where it's incredibly easy for an animal to hide. It's a place where an animal can leave traces but no tracks, where a dead animal can be skin and bones one minute and gone the next. And yet it's the same place that a small team of people have already identified animals that aren't meant to be here. So maybe tomorrow, maybe next month or next year, somewhere out there in the mist, a flash gun will go pop in the gloom, and orang pendek will go from being an X-creature to the next creature.
Up next, witnesses are powerless, firemen are baffled. What makes some people suddenly engulfed in blue flames? Is it a case of spontaneous human combustion? Find out on Science Mysteries and uncover more scientific mysteries. Just click at discovery.com. This has been a presentation of the Discovery Channel and the BBC, World Class Television.